Alright, this is the Razer Blade 18. The configuration I have here has a 13th gen Intel i9-13950HX and RTX 4090 with 32 gigs of DDR5 RAM and 2 terabytes of storage. The chassis has the typical Razer look, made with a unibody anodized aluminum in this black finish. It can attract fingerprints, but I have noticed that this year's model picks up a lot less smudges, at least for me. I have been using it every day for the past week and haven't felt the need to wipe it down, but your mileage may vary there. You'll also want to be careful not to scratch the black coating off, as it will show bright silver underneath, which is one of the main reasons I wish Razer would offer a mercury white version. The build is very rigid, basically no flex on the lid and keyboard deck. It feels really solid. It's a larger laptop, but not too much larger than a 17-inch. It actually has a smaller footprint than my Alienware X17. For backpacks, this doesn't fit in my average sized everyday backpack, but it does barely fit into my backpack rated for a 16-inch laptop and comfortably in my 17-inch laptop bag. So you want to make sure the dimensions work for whatever bag you plan to use. On the left, we have a power connector, which can be plugged in both ways, an Ethernet port, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, Thunderbolt 4 with power delivery up to 100 watts, and a headphone microphone jack. On the right is an HDMI 2.1 port, another USB 3.2 Gen 2 port, a USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 with power delivery up to 100 watts, and an SD card reader. Opening the lid, you are presented with a large 18-inch Quad HD Plus 240Hz G-Sync display. So this year, it's got a taller 16:10 aspect ratio, but it is still an IPS display. They didn't include a mini LED option like they did for the Blade 16 in this 18-inch version, at least not now at release. But the good news is that it's a fantastic IPS display. My Spider X Elite is measuring the color accuracy at 100% of the sRGB, 91% of the Adobe RGB, and 100% of the P3 color gamut, and the brightness gets to 578 nits, backing up Razer's claim of 500 nits. And luckily, my unit has nearly no backlight bleed, which is something that I am very picky about and has been present on every other Razer laptop I've owned in the past. So I am quite happy about that. The colors look vibrant, and I think it's the perfect resolution for a gaming laptop. It's the right balance for high refresh rate gaming with a clear, sharp image at this size. Above the display is a 5 megapixel webcam and Windows Hello. I'd say the webcam quality is pretty good. It's got a wider angle, it's less grainy and noisy compared to other gaming laptop cameras I've used in the past, so overall, I'm happy with it. Windows Hello is also really fast on this machine. Most of the time, it will flash through the sign-on before I can even read it. So moving down to the keyboard, it's your typical Razer Blade keyboard. You have the RGB backlighting that is customizable in Razer Synapse. I think Razer actually does this the best. The power button is located on the top right, which may be prone to an accidental press if you are reaching for the backspace key. A quick press won't turn off your computer. Still, it's something you might want to watch out for. There is no dedicated macro keys, but you can set up Razer Hypershift for customizable functions if you need it. And I do like the overall typing experience. The keys themselves feel high quality and are satisfying to type on. It did take me a few days to adjust to the layout. The keys feel like they are slightly closer together than what I'm used to on a MacBook and Logitech keyboards. So I found myself overreaching and accidentally pressing the wrong key, but I've adjusted quickly and enjoy this keyboard overall. There is also no number pad. Now, I think Razer chose aesthetics over functionality here. For me personally, I do think it looks cleaner, but I totally understand that those who want to use this to complete work tasks may prefer to have that number pad. Beneath that is a very large 7.5-inch glass trackpad. I found it to be very accurate using Microsoft Precision drivers and have a smooth texture. I haven't had any problems with palm rejection when typing personally. Now that might be because I am very accustomed to these large trackpads now, but I have had a problem with it picking up my palm as a third finger when scrolling, and then triggered the 3-finger swipe up gesture in Windows. It happened enough time that I had to turn it off completely to avoid it. Now the speakers sit on either side of the keyboard deck and they sound pretty good. They get loud, but start to lose clarity, I'd say above 70% volume. They're not as clear or have as much bass as a MacBook Pro, but are still some of the best sounding speakers I've heard on a gaming laptop. Okay, flipping over the device, the bottom cover is easy enough to open. You'll need to unscrew with a T5 screwdriver, then pull the cover toward the front of the laptop to unlatch. Then you can remove it. You can see at the top, there's 2 fans in the vapor chamber cooler, and then another fan between the 2 cells of the battery, and there's user upgradable SSDs and RAM, up to 64 gigs for the RAM and up to 8 terabytes for storage. So one annoyance here is that Razer claimed that one of the M.2 slots would be empty, even in the 2 terabyte version. But instead of giving me 1 2 terabyte stick, they gave me 2 1 terabyte sticks, meaning if I was to add more storage, I would have to replace one and lose out on a terabyte. Okay, so gaming benchmarks. All benchmarks here are with the latest Windows and NVIDIA drivers, with the GPU set to high and the CPU set to boost in Razer Synapse. No overclocking or undervolting. I did, however, notice I was having issues with Advanced Optimus, so I switched it to dedicated GPU only mode in the BIOS, which has given it a small bump in performance. So when gaming and running benchmarks, the GPU was pulling around 150 to 160 watts, and the CPU around 50 to 60 watts. I only noticed the GPU pulling the full 175 watts when testing ray tracing at 4K on a few titles. However, I never noticed the GPU exceed 74 degrees, even when pulling that full 175 watts. For synthetic benchmarks, I'm getting a score over 20,000, which is on par with many desktop 3090 GPUs. And I suspect that you could get higher if you're willing to overclock. This is also a nearly 1,000 point score higher than when I tested with Advanced Optimus on. After a 10-minute multi-core stress test in Cinebench R23, the 13950HX in the Blade is scoring over 27,000, and the average CPU temp was around 83 degrees Celsius. The CPU pulled around 130 watts on the high end for the short power boost, then settled down and averaged around 120 watts. Overall, impressive out-of-the-box performance on the Blade laptop. You could likely get this over 30,000 with an undervolt and an overclock if you're interested in tinkering. And here are some benchmarks in Premiere and Photoshop for content creation. When gaming, the area above the keyboard gets quite hot at around 118 degrees Fahrenheit, but the WASD keys and palm rest stayed comfortable around 93 degrees. You can feel the fan directly under the WASD keys blowing that cool air, which is really helping keep the temperatures down. Using the custom profile with the CPU set to boost, GPU set to high, the fan noise is sitting around 57 decibels. Now, I would say that this is loud enough to where you'd likely want to wear headphones, at least I know I do, but in balanced mode, it's a much less distracting 50 decibels, and silent is around 45 decibels. In this silent mode, the fans are barely audible and won't distract anybody in the room. Okay, for battery life, doing light tasks such as streaming video and browsing the internet with no updates or downloads running in the background at 240 Hz, I got 4 to 5 hours of battery life. So lowering my refresh rate to 60 Hz got me an additional hour. Now this was tested with Advanced Optimus on, so if you do decide to change that in the BIOS, you will likely get less time. Razer Synapse actually has an option to automatically switch to 60 Hz when on battery, but I found that it's not exactly flawless. I've had to manually change the refresh rate back to 240 Hz when plugging back in enough times to make me just turn it off. The 330 watt power adapter is quite compact and has a nice braided cable, but I found it to be a little bit cumbersome to put away. This also adds about 2 pounds to the total package. All right, the configuration I have here is quite expensive at $4,500 US. But whether that's worth it or not is very subjective. In my opinion, it is incredibly impressive to have desktop 3090 performance in a laptop, and that level of performance is more than enough for most people. But I can understand the argument of getting a 4000 series desktop instead and pairing that with a less expensive laptop for the same or less money, as that could be seen as a better value in comparison. But I am someone who likes to game in more than one spot, and I like the option to easily use it in different rooms. And that's not as viable with a desktop. So while it's not necessarily in everyone's budget, I still think that this is a fantastic gaming laptop. Before you go, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to hit the like button. And if you want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can click the thumbnail right here on the screen. Thanks for watching.